Mr. President, when I arrived in Washington this morning, I fully intended to object to the certification of the electoral votes. However, the events that have transpired today have forced me to reconsider, and I cannot now in good conscience object to the certification of these electors. The violence, the lawlessness, and siege of the halls of Congress are abhorrent and stand as a direct attack on the very institution my objection was intended to protect, the sanctity of the American democratic process. And I thank law enforcement for keeping us safe.
All right, first of all, I've been at work all day. I've seen a little bit of the protest that was going on. If there was some violence, someone please explain that to me because I missed it. Other than the cops shooting a woman, someone please give me a link to it. But all these people have seemed to learn nothing.
It took place in these chambers today, and I pray that America never suffers such a dark day again. Though the fate of this vote is clear, the future of the American people's faith in the core institution of this democracy remains uncertain. We as a body must turn our focus to protecting the integrity of our elections and restoring every American's.
What I saw was peaceful protest, and what I'm seeing from all the news is there was violence, and they were fine whenever it was Antifa or Black Lives Matter having a mostly peaceful protest while burning down their own cities, burning it down. Now, I did see where a window got broke and the people went into their house. Government makes no money except for off of our taxes. This is our house.
Senator Booker, and 2.5 minutes to Senator Kaine. In reverse order.
Mr. President, and my colleagues. Senator from Virginia. I applaud.
Also, they keep talking about the election fraud. You know, they say it didn't happen. We say it did. There's evidence online that it did happen. Now, if they are so sure about it, then why ain't the courts hearing it? We're being bamboozled, folks. Why won't the courts hear it? Why don't we throw it all out there on the table and let the American people decide this? Okay? No more trust in my government. I'm sorry to say.
Our late friend, John Lewis, congressman from Georgia, was savagely beaten on Bloody Sunday just for marching for voting rights. That act of violence inspired this body, the U.S. Senate,
here's a pedophile
to come together in March of 1965 and work to pass in a bipartisan fashion the Voting Rights Act. We should be coming together today after acts of violence as a United States Senate to affirm the votes of all who cast ballots.
Yeah, pedophile Tim Kaine. Nobody wants to hear you, Tim Kaine. Pedophile. Satanist. What these people are doing right now, we're going to see a lot happening in the next few days. All right. From what I saw, and please correct me if I'm wrong. Please put any links in here that we can look at to show violence. What I saw were protesters. Now there were cops there. I saw protesters get sprayed. One of them even got shot and died. And bless her heart. Prayers for that family. But I saw no one attacking cops. I saw no one catching anything on fire. No graffiti. And I could be wrong. I'm going to look into it more. You can guarantee that. But the way they're acting is that they went and destroyed the Capitol. Well, those patriots did today is protected under our Constitution.
In the history.
And I'm telling you what, they're messing up right now. They are messing up. We're not going to take it.
Thank you, and I yield to my colleague from New Jersey.
Sit down, you
Senator
pedophile,
from New Jersey.
bastard. Probably 99% of the people in here are Satanists. They play for the other team.
Mr. Vice President,
They make me sick.
I can only think of 2 times in American history that individuals laid siege to our Capitol, stormed our sacred civic spaces, and tried to upend and
The media is
overrun
bought and paid for.
this government. One was in the War of 1812,
Sorry, folks, I'm a bit aggravated today.
and the other one was today.
Is that
What's
Booker
interesting
guy?
about the parallel between the two is
Freaking hypocrites.
they both were waving flags to a sole sovereign.
So a cop shot a woman today. You know, these people weren't attacking the cops. They went into their house. They wanted their voices heard, and they showed it by protesting, which is allowed under our Constitution. You know, it's part of our Constitution. Can anyone in the chat right now tell me what happened during the Boston Tea Party, the revolution? What happened that incited us to go further than just protesting?
We brought this hell upon ourselves. My colleague from Texas said that this was a moment where there were unprecedented allegations of voter fraud. Yes, that is true. They were unprecedented when the president, before the election even happened, said, if I lose this election, then the election was rigged. That's unprecedented. It's unprecedented before the night of the.
Why don't they prove it? Let's take it to a court of law. And that's what's so shameful. They're talking about protecting the Constitution, and they're stomping all over it. It's shameful, people. It's time to act. You know, this isn't about President Trump. I have no faith in my government anymore. I don't think I'll ever vote again. Because what's the point of voting? Voting is a peaceful protest to throw these people out of office or to keep the people that we want in office. But whenever they rig that, and you can get on the internet. Don't go to YouTube. Don't use Google for your search engine. Don't get on Twitter, because they are suppressing folks' freedom. They are suppressing the truth. But get on there and look. There is plenty. Go to some of my past live streams I've done on this. There's plenty of proof out there. This is sickening to me. I really don't.
Saw it when I saw pictures of yet another insurgency, of a flag of another group of Americans who tried to challenge our nation. I saw the flag of the Confederacy there. What will we do? How will we confront this shame? How will we confront this dark second time in America?
Are you talking about the guy with the horns, Pappy? The horns and the pagan symbols on his chest?
We must in spirit join together like those Georgians on a bridge called the Edmund Pettus who joined hands, who were called.
We don't need to wait till inauguration day. This needs to happen. We need to. I'm thinking about calling off work the rest of this week and going to D.C.
What we should say now, commit ourselves to that ideal, that together we shall.
The time to act is now. What these people are doing right now is unconstitutional.
I yield up to 5 minutes. The senator from Nebraska.
Need to go to this guy's house.
Senator from Nebraska.
Mr.
You live
President,
close
thank
to
you.
me.
And Mr. Vice President, let me just say before I begin,
Freaking sick.
thank you for the way you have fulfilled your constitutional duties and your oath of office today. It obviously hasn't been easy.
And one of these liars, one of these satanic pedophilic liars, said earlier that if people wanted to protest, they should do it at their state level, at their state capital, at the representatives' place. What so happens, our representatives are here in Washington, D.C. But they are correct. We do need to make our voices known, make them know that we're not very happy. And I'm all for bringing back tar and feather.
And Adams willingly leaves the executive mansion and moves back to Massachusetts, and Jefferson peacefully assumes power. And people all over Europe said, that must be fake news. Those must be bad reports. There's no way any executive would ever willingly lay down power. And yet Adams, in defeat, did something glorious to give all of us a gift. I wanted to celebrate that, and it feels a little bit harder now. This building has been desecrated. Blood has been spilled in the hallways.
Who spilled it? Who spilled it?
I was with octogenarian members of
What
this
was
chamber
desecrated?
that
Let's
needed
see
to
the proof
have
of it.
troops and police stabilize them to get down the stairs at a time when a lot of our staffs were panicked and under their desks and not knowing what was going to happen to them. It was ugly today. But you know what? It turns out
The people that were there today are the same people that backed the thin blue line. Whenever their mayors or their governors was telling them to stand down while the city burned around them, while they let Antifa do whatever, it's the same people that backed them. Same people that backed the thin blue
isn't what
line.
America is. They've been given a glorious inheritance. This is the 59th presidential election. If the vice president wasn't the chair and if the president pro tem was, I'd have made some joke that Chuck Grassley has voted in 2/3 of those 59 presidential elections.
Antifa has admitted that was their plan to dress up as Trump supporters, and they'll figure it out. You know, we got a lot of tech savvy people that are combing the internet right now to match up these faces. This isn't over. No matter what they do tonight, it's not over. It's just the beginning. 2021 is going to, I'm afraid, folks, that it's going to be hell on earth. And I pray, Lord, please, please come back tonight. Come back tomorrow. Come back right now, Lord.
Union. There's a lot that's broken in this country, but not anything that's so big that the American people can't rebuild it, that freedom and community and entrepreneurial effort and that neighborhoods can't rebuild. Nothing that's broken is so big that we can't fix it. Generations of our forefathers and our foremothers, probably not a word, our ancestors have spilled blood to defend the glories of this republic. Why would they do that? Because America is the most exceptional nation in the history of the world, and because the Constitution is the greatest political document that's ever been written. Most
Why don't you obey it?
Have said might makes right, and we saw some of that hooligan nuttery today. Might makes right. No, it doesn't. God gives us rights by nature, and government is just our shared project to secure those rights. America has always been about what we choose to do together, the way we reaffirm our constitutional system, where we've got some governmental tasks, and we all in this body could do better at those governmental tasks, but the heart of America is not government. The center of America is not Washington, D.C. The center of America is the neighborhoods where 330 million Americans are raising their kids and trying to put food on the table and trying to love their neighbor. That's the center of America. We're not supposed to be the most important people in America. We're supposed to be servant leaders who try to maintain a framework for ordered liberty so that there's a structure that back home where they live, they can get from the silver frame of structure and order to the golden apple at the center, as Washington would have said it, which is the things that they build together. The places where they coach Little League, the places where they invite people to synagogue or church. Sometimes the big things we do together are governmental, like kicking Hitler's ass or like going to the moon. Sometimes there is governmental stuff.
I pray some of these people do the right thing tonight.
And we're supposed to serve them by maintaining order and by rejecting violence. You can't do big things like that if you hate your neighbors. You can't do big things together as Americans.
You know, another thing, Trump asked people to be here. They're going to try to get him up on treason and, you know, whatever charges. And again, it's not about Trump anymore. It never was about Trump. But and as far as I know, Trump could be one of them, one of the elite, and this might be a part of the plan. I don't think that, but it's possible. You know, there's possibilities out there, but it's not about him. It's about us, folks. We're losing our country. We can't even have a fair and honest election. They won't even look into it. It's that's how bad it's gotten. And people are so asleep and that veil's in front of their eyes. I posted something on Facebook yesterday about them saying all woman, some Democratic pagan idiot that says other names of God, and one of them was Brahma or something like that. And my dad called me at work and asked me not to post on stuff like that on Facebook, which really got on my nerves. Love my daddy to death, but I pray to God that the veil lifts and people wake up to what's going on.
Before, and he returned in the beginning of the Civil War to serve as president. It was a different place than he knew it as congressman, and 15 years had changed a lot. The Spriggs boarding house across the street, which is now the Library of Congress, was gone, and this building was changing. Big changes. They're building a dome on the Capitol. But they were also in the earliest days of a war, and President Lincoln was counseled, stop building the dome. Costs too much money, we can't spend any more time on it. And he said, no, we're going to build that dome and we're going to finish it. That dome and this building will be a symbol of this country that will survive this Civil War and come back strong. So they built the dome, they won the war, and since those days, that dome and this building have been a symbol to this country, a symbol of unity and of hope. Tourists come through here before COVID-19 by the tens of thousands.
COVID-19. Wonder what that's all about.
Business continues in the U.S. Capitol tonight on the day that has been racked by violence. This process continuing.
What violence? What violence? You brainwashing news media.
Bipartisan rebuke. We heard from Vice President Mike Pence presiding over this joint
Where
session of
the
Congress,
police shot someone?
Wreaked havoc on the Capitol. You did not win. Violence never wins.
A young girl
wins. This is the people's house, and in what may well be a harbinger of things to come from Senators James Langford and Kelly Loeffler, both Republicans of Oklahoma and Georgia, indicating both initially backing the Commission on Voter Fraud, saying it is not going to happen at this point. We are headed towards certification of Joe Biden tonight. They will not oppose the certification. As we heard earlier today from Senator Rand Paul, he did not believe there would be any more objections, and we are in fact seeing that play out thus far tonight.
Yes, it is an unprecedented violence today that
now
we
listen
saw.
to these
and
liars.
after
Listen
the
to
Vice
this
President
filth.
spoke, of course, we heard from Mitch McConnell saying that the U.S. Senate will not be intimidated and not be kept out of the chambers. Both the Vice President.
Why would I listen to you all? All you do is lie. I'm so sick right now. I'm sure YouTube don't want people watching this.
Process which we are part of. This mob was inspired by a president who cannot accept defeat. If you wonder whether I'm going too far in what I say, just read the transcript with the Secretary of State from Georgia and listen to this president's wild conspiracy theories, one after the other.
Prove him wrong. Let's take it to a court of law. Let's find some honest judges and prove him wrong.
No basis in fact.
Please. We as voters,
This president
by definition, are grown up.
He coaxes.
You have to be 18 before you can vote. Treat us as such. You work for us.
To find the votes he needs.
Folks, I'm trying really hard not to
in any other venue that would
get too aggravated tonight.
Obvious
but
crime.
This is hard.
The links he will go to are obvious. The Texas senator says to us, well, many people still agree with him, when it gets down to the bottom line.
You've seen a bunch of people that agree.
Many people have fallen for this
These people have learned nothing.
position.
And now they're rubbing it in our face.
If I lost. Well, I would say that
there's going to be hell to pay. That's all I can say.
57 lawsuits, 62 lawsuits. I've heard so many numbers. After 90 different judges, after this president
refused to see him.
Case, the best he could put together.
Say that part. They refused
the
to see
court
him.
In the land across the street, where
refused
he
to see it.
Chosen 3 justices on the Supreme Court.
What they did?
The senator from Texas, you know much more about that.
What they
did?
I
do. I don't believe they let
you
that
don't know
paper
none
that
about
he
it.
sent up there even hit the desk before they laughed it out of the court. And that's the best he had to offer. No evidence whatsoever of this rigged election and this fraudulence. The senator from Texas says, we just want to create a little commission. 10 days, we're going to audit all the states, particularly the ones in contention here, and find out what actually occurred. And it really draws its parallel in 1876.
So after we make it finalized that Joe Biden is going to be president, then we're going to audit.
Achieved. It was not just some ordinary governmental commission. It was a commission that killed Reconstruction, that established Jim Crow, that even after a civil war which tore this nation apart, it re-enslaved African Americans. And it was a commission that invited the voter suppression we are still fighting today in America. Let me close by saying this.
Damn right we'll
fight. The vote we're going to have here is a clear choice of whether we are going to feed the beast of ignorance or we are going to tell the truth to the American people.
What is ignorance, sir? Can you explain it to us? Ignorance is not having the information. Why don't we have the information?
Majority Leader.
Let's not be ignorant.
I yield up to 5
Let's put the information out there and let the people decide. Let's put the facts out there and let the people decide. That way we won't be ignorant.
Freedom of speech and the freedom to protest are provided in our Constitution. And while I share the same frustrations many Americans have over the presidential election, the violence and mob rule which occurred at the U.S. Capitol today and across the country over the past year are unacceptable.
Let's listen to these key
at
words.
The highest level. And like all of us in the chamber, I'm thankful for the heroic law enforcement officers.
Heroic. The ones that shot a 16-year-old child?
Back to the
those heroic officers?
Process. During my 29-year career as an obstetrician and gynecologist, too often I had to sit down with patients and give them a very bad diagnosis. It might have been a young mother of 3 who I delivered all 3 of her babies, now with metastatic breast cancer, or perhaps another woman with advanced cervical or ovarian cancer, all with a very challenging prognosis. But before I sat down with each one of those patients, I carefully reviewed all their labs, their x-rays, and their pathology to make sure I had the facts straight. But at the end of the day, my final recommendation was always going to be a recommendation from my heart. I want my fellow Kansans and all Americans to know that I've given as much consideration and thought surrounding the issue objecting to a state's electoral college votes as I did considering the treatment plan for a serious health concern. And today's decision, once again, is from my heart. Mr. President, I rise today to restore integrity to our republic. And I rise to join the many of our colleagues who are all concerned for current and future generations. We must restore faith and confidence in one of our republic's most hallowed, patriotic duties, voting. There is no question our U.S. Constitution empowers state legislatures to execute free, legal, and fair elections. Unfortunately, in several states, the clear authority of those state legislatures to determine the rules for voting were usurped by governors, secretaries of states, and activist courts. Our laws and Constitution should always be followed, especially in a time of crisis. I don't rise to undo a state's legally obtained electoral college votes. Rather, I rise in hopes of improving the integrity of the ballot to hold states accountable to the time-proven Constitution.
Now we'll come back to that whenever we get around to the final lies. Do you know what video it was? Perhaps YouTube took it down. Or the one that says Antifa was.
Read a tweet, and then Lance, I want to come to you. This is Lynn Wood tweeted, indisputable photographic evidence that Antifa violently broke into Congress today to elicit harm and do damage. These are not Trump supporters. Don't be fooled. Trump supporters are peaceful. It was Antifa that created the violence in our cities over the past several months. Lance, that's from Lynn Wood. Your thoughts?
My thoughts are I must be on target because I haven't heard Lynn. I haven't even heard about what's been going on inside the Capitol. I've been out on the street and out on the beat all day. I just came in to talk to you. So
well,
Lynn is right.
Go ahead.
I think he's got it right. And I think that these guys are staging kabuki theater. And here's the devil always plays his hand. If you're discerning, you see it. If they were smart, they only would have pipe bombed the Democrats. But by pipe bombing the Democrats and the Republicans, how many people really believe that Republicans are bombing themselves?
What pipe bomb?
We're kind of like pulling for Pence today. We haven't given up on the Republican Party yet. Donald Trump, as far as I remember, was president of the Republican Party. So that's anarchy.
I've given up on the Republican Party.
Okay, I want to show you. Here's the photographic evidence. We just got this. I love our team here. If you can see that photo. It's the guy they're telling me on the left with the photo, and there's the guy with the horns that was on the top.
So is that this guy?
Handle down at the bottom of his photo that he took. Do you see what it says? PhillyAntifa.org.
Well,
that's his own picture. There's his own handle
inside
the Capitol building. We have a picture.
But this will be covered up
with the buffalo horns.
They'll cover
there.
this up.
He was
from what I understand, the guy with the horns is the one that busted the window out. I might be incorrect about that.
It's his own photo that he posted himself. Sometimes criminals are not too bright, are they, Lance?
No, I love it. This is like the Charles Manson photo here. I mean, this is great. So this is how they're going to expose themselves. What I really want you guys to think about is what a great job you're doing in news right now. Yeah, because nobody's covering the news like you are. And
these people are so crooked. It wouldn't surprise me if a couple of senators brought in pipe bombs to plant. It wouldn't surprise me if the police, the paid off police, the hired thugs planted the pipe bomb.
Trump is more important to them than protecting the most basic tenet of our republic, the adherence to free and fair elections. There's one thing I know.
That's what they do. If someone comes on Twitter or YouTube or whatever, they ban it. They wash it away. Now, if what they're telling us is lies, the person that Linwood or whatever his name was that posted it about the pipe bombs or whatever, if that's lies, then prove it wrong. Don't ban him. If you silence someone, if you cut a man's tongue out, that means you're afraid of what he's saying. Nobody wants debating.
That is the ideal that this nation was founded
I can't even talk to my own father.
That is why a few patriots threw some tea in Boston Harbor.
Try to show him
Washington
proof, and it's so frustrating.
Suffragists were arrested a century ago.
They don't want to see the proof.
John Lewis crossed that bridge.
The brainwashing is so bad in this country.
It is why
and people's waking up. More and more is waking up.
Standing in line.
And if you can't tell the lies we're hearing from mainstream media and this filth gathered here in this room today, in our house,
adversarial relationship with the truth.
Bless your heart.
Trump always cries conspiracy, always foments chaos whenever something doesn't go his way. But
you give us the definition of conspiracy, ma'am?
In this chamber, have the opportunity to prove that here in this country, truth matters, that right matters, that the will of the people matters more than the whims of any single powerful individual.
What matters?
I have no tea to throw in Boston Harbor tonight.
We do.
And I regret that I have no rucksack to pack for my country. No Black Hawk to pilot.
What?
Nor am I asking for any grand gesture from my Republican colleagues.
Come on, honey. Say from the heart. Don't read that.
All that I'm asking of you is to reflect on the oaths that you have sworn, on the damage done to our union
That's
today,
what we're asking you all too.
and on the
The oath
sacrifices
you have sworn.
made by those who've given so much to this nation. From the service members at Fort Huachuca and Marine Corps Air Station Yuma to the marchers who bent America's moral arc a bit more towards justice with every single step that they took, every bridge that they crossed. Then ask yourself whether the democracy they were willing to bleed for, the country that each of us in this chamber has sworn to defend, is worth damaging in order to protect the porcelain ego of a man who treats the Constitution as if it were little more than a yellowing piece of paper. I think we all know the right answer.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I yield.
How many seen lies?
The Senator from Kentucky, Senator Paul.
Senator from
I'll pay
Kentucky.
you a visit.
I wrote a speech for today. I was planning to
Oh,
say
this-
that I fear the chaos of establishing a precedent that Congress can overturn elections. Boy, was I right. Chaos, anarchy. The violence today was wrong and un-American.
What violence?
The
Oh,
vote we're
not
about
you
to
two.
cast is incredibly important. Now more than ever, the question is, should Congress override the certified results from the states and nullify the states' rights to conduct elections? The vote today is not a protest. The vote today is literally to overturn elections. We've been told that this is a protest. Well, this is about an electoral commission. No, it's not. It's about whether to seat the electors that have been certified by a state. It's not about an electoral commission. It's not about a protest. You can go outside if you want to protest. This is about overturning a state certified election.
What do you think they were doing?
If you vote to overturn these elections, wouldn't it be the opposite of what states' rights Republicans have always advocated for? This would doom the Electoral College forever. It was never intended by our founders that Congress have the power to overturn state certified elections. My oath to the Constitution
Exactly,
doesn't allow
John.
me to
The
disobey
Democratic
the
Party
law.
is, you know,
I
I'm
can't
raised
vote
for
to
Democrat.
overturn the verdict of states.
That's
Such a vote would be to
that's the only
overturn
party
everything
back in the coal fields of
held
southern
dear
West
by those of
Virginia.
us who
You could vote
support
for
the
it.
rights of states in this great system of federalism that was bequeathed to us by our founders. The Electoral College was created to devolve the power of selecting presidential electors to the states. The Electoral College is, without question, an inseparable friend to those who believe that every American across our vast country deserves to be heard. If Congress were to give the power to overturn the state's election, what terrible chaos would ensue every 4 years? Imagine the furor against the Electoral College if Congress becomes a forum to overturn states' Electoral College slates. It's one thing to be angry. It's another to focus one's anger in constructive ways. That hasn't happened today, to say the least.
I think it
We
has.
simply cannot destroy the Constitution, our laws, and the Electoral College in the process. I hope as the nation's anger cools, we can channel that energy into essential electoral reforms at the state level.
I don't think it's going to cool.
America's admired around the world for our free elections. We absolutely must fix this mess and restore confidence and integrity to our elections. We must.
Democratic Leader.
Senator from Virginia, Senator Warner.
Senator from Virginia.
Mr. President, I think like most of us, I'm still pretty reeling from what happened today.
You better get used to it.
What I was going to talk about was the work that I'm most proud of since I've been here with my good friend Richard Burr and all the members of the Intelligence Committee about a multi-year report we did into foreign interference in our elections. Probably our top recommendation of that 5-volume bipartisan report was that any official or candidate should use restraint and caution when questioning results of our elections. Because when you do so, you often carry out the goals of our foreign adversaries. Use caution because whether knowingly or unknowingly, and whether that adversary is in Russia or China or Iran, their goals are pretty simple. They want to make it appear to Americans, to folks around the world, to their own people, that there's nothing special about American democracy. I was going to try in a feeble way to maybe reach some of the rhetorical heights of Ben Sass, and I knew I couldn't do that. So instead, I know I'm violating rules here. Today's the day for violating rules. So this is a photo that appears today on one of the most prominent German newspapers. You don't need to draw up it. You can draw up photos from any newspaper or any television feed anywhere across the world. What is this for thugs? Thugs in the halls of this capital.
My question is, who owns these newspapers and news media?
Everything we say we believe in.
Can you tell us that, sir? And why are these people thugs? Who are these people that you're wanting to slip their photo on your little phone?
Images are priceless for our adversaries. God willing, tonight, in an overwhelming way, we're going to take a small step in a bipartisan way to start restoring that trust of our people and hopefully the billions of people around the world who believe in that notion of American democracy. Remember, these images will still endure. I yield back.
Are you talking about patriots, sir?
Majority Leader.
That you
Mr.
work
President,
for?
I yield up to 5 minutes to the senator from Missouri, Senator Hawley.
Mitch, you need to go away. Go away, dude.
Thank you. I want to begin this evening by saying thank you to the men and women of the Capitol Hill Police, the armed.
Thank you for shooting a 16-year-old girl.
Metropolitan Police and others who came to this Capitol, who put their lives on the line to protect everyone here working inside of it. And I want to thank law enforcement all across this country, in my home state of Missouri and everywhere else who do that day in and day
I'll bet
out.
$1 to a donut right now that any violence against the police or any type of destruction, it'll come out that it was Antifa or whatever
in the capital of the United
posing
States.
as patriots.
And in this country, in the United States of America, we cannot say emphatically enough,
Now, if a cops attack someone first, then, you've got a right to protect yourself.
Is not how you achieve something better. Our Constitution.
Again, I might be wrong about all that. I haven't looked into it yet. I've been to work
Abraham Lincoln, no appeal from ballots to bullets, which is what we saw unfortunately attempted tonight. There is no place for that in the United States of America. And that's why I submit to my colleagues that what we're doing here tonight is actually very important. Because for those who have concerns about the integrity of our elections, those who have concerns about what happened in November, this is the appropriate means. This is the lawful place where those objections and concerns should be heard. This is the forum that the law provides for. Our laws provide for those concerns.
Please go by the laws. Let's bring law and justice back. Let's follow the Constitution. Let's do that.
And so to those
let's not talk about it. Let's do it.
Just a formality today, an antique ceremony that we've engaged in for a couple of hundred years. I can't say that I agree. I can't say that our precedents suggest that. I actually think it's very vital what we do. The opportunity to be heard, to register objections is very vital because this is the place where those objections are to be heard and dealt with, debated, and finally resolved. In this lawful means, peacefully, without violence, without attacks.
What
without
violence?
And so, Mr. President, let me just say now briefly in lieu of speaking about it later, a word about Pennsylvania.
And please, if you're listening to this, put a link in the comments. Something that any of the patriots did wrong.
Concerned, millions of Americans concerned about our election integrity.
Anything unlawful that they did.
Quite apart from allegations of any fraud, you have a state constitution that has been interpreted for over a century to say that there is no mail-in balloting permitted, except for in very narrow circumstances that's also provided for in the law. And yet, last
They
year,
keep saying that they were
Pennsylvania
armed
elected officials passed a
protesters.
whole new law that
Again,
allows universal
I haven't
mail-in
watched a
balloting
lot of it, but
and did it
the
irregardless of
people
what the
armed,
Pennsylvania Constitution said. And then when
and if
Pennsylvania
so,
citizens
God bless
tried to
them.
go and be heard on this subject before the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, they were
They have that
dismissed
right.
on grounds of procedure, timeliness,
You have
and
a
violation of
God-given
that
right
Supreme
to
Court's
protect
own
yourself, your
precedent.
property, and your family.
So the merits of the case have never been heard. The constitutionality of the statute actually has never been defended. I'm not
Maybe
aware
they
of
were
any
in that
court
building
that's passed on its
protecting it from you
constitutionality. Actually, I'm not
being
aware
a
of anybody who's
thieves.
defended the constitutionality. And this was the statute that governed this last election, in which there are over 2.5 million mail-in ballots in Pennsylvania. This is my point, that this is the forum. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court hasn't heard the case. There's no other court to go to hear the case in the state. And so this is the
I
appropriate
mean,
place
catfish.
for these concerns to be raised, which is why I have raised them here today. And I hope that this body will not miss the opportunity to take affirmative action to address the concerns of so many millions of Americans, to say to millions of Americans tonight that violence is never warranted, that violence will not be tolerated, that those who engage in it will be prosecuted, but that this body will act to address the concerns of all Americans across the country. We do need an investigation into irregularities, fraud. We do need a way forward together. We need election security reforms. I bet my friends on the other side of the aisle don't disagree with that. We need to find a way to move forward on that together so that the American people from both parties, all walks of life, can have confidence in their elections and that we can arrange ourselves under the rule of law that we share together. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Democratic leader.
Senator from Pennsylvania, Mr. Casey.
Senator from Pennsylvania.
I love this game. I think it's kept me sane through all this.
I rise tonight to defend the people of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, to defend the more than 6.9 million voters who voted in this election.
How many millions is that? More than you had registered voters,
this
sir.
attempt to disenfranchise the voters of Pennsylvania based upon a lie, a falsehood. That same lie sowed the seeds of today's violence and today's lawlessness here in the Capitol.
Nothing but lies, dude. That's all you do is lie.
One of my constituents, Susan from the Lehigh Valley, the community of our state where Senator
Or
Toomey
God
lives,
grant you the strength.
recently wrote to my office and perhaps said it best. She said, and I quote, "We cannot allow anybody to overturn the legal votes of the citizens of Pennsylvania. This would be the ultimate destruction."
Yeah, exactly. The
democracy,"
legal votes.
unquote.
Let's
Susan
not
had it
overturn the
right.
legal ones.
We cannot allow anybody, and she put that word in all caps, to overturn the legal votes of the people of our state. Let me address the allegation regarding the Pennsylvania Constitution and the General Assembly. Somehow that the General Assembly didn't have the authority to enact no excuse mail-in voting, that process for the people of our state. First, the law in question, Act 77, was passed in 2019 and was implemented without any serious question as to its constitutionality. The law was passed by a...
The only English he speaks is lies. So, yesterday was Georgia's runoff election. Now, I watched earlier something, Rudolph Giuliani had a guy on there, some computer wizard. They caught him red-handed transferring votes. Instead of pulling the votes out from under the table like they like to do on these Dominion machines, which God only knows why they were allowed to use those again. And that's what's suspicious to me, folks. You know, Trump could have come out with a lot more stuff, a lot more dirt that had nothing to do with this election, but on the people, these satanic, pedophilic, elite puppets that we have in office. It's either all a big lie, and I'm, for lack of a better term, retarded, or it's the truth, and they're all covering it up. And that's what I think it is. I think they've got blackmail and dirt on each other. But you look at stuff like Epstein, you look at stuff like Hillary Clinton's what's his name? John Podesta, the child molester. Some of the photos that he had in his house, some of the people he hung out with, like Maria Abramovich, the witch, that has disgusting what she gets away with it by calling it art, but it's disgusting satanic stuff. Look into some of this. Please, people, do your own research on this. These people are sick. Look up adrenochrome. And if I know about it, and there's a lot of damning evidence out there, then I'm sure Trump's got to know about it. And our future's at stake here. I say put it all out on the table. Let's wake some people up. Let's put it all out there. I suggest everybody joins Parler. It's a good conservative alternative to Twitter or Facebook and Twitter and Google, YouTube. They're all owned by this scum. This scum here, they're only the puppets for the bigger scum, and ultimately their boss is Satan. But you can find all this stuff on the internet, so do some research, look into some of this stuff.
Commissioner Al Schmidt.
Matter of fact, we might start doing it together. This goes way back, way back. You see, Satan tricked God's creation, Eve, into taking a bite of this forbidden fruit. And she took it to Adam and gave him a little bite. And it's been downhill from there. We are in a fallen world that is run by Satan. Ultimately, it's run by God, but he's given us free will. And look what we've done with it.
I yield 5 minutes to the senator from Utah, Senator Romney.
Senator from Utah. Mr. President, today was heartbreaking. And I was shaken to the core as I thought about the people I met in China and Russia and Afghanistan and Iraq and other places who yearn for freedom and who look to this building and these shores as a place of hope. And I saw the images being broadcast around the world, and it breaks my heart. I have 25 grandchildren.
This guy.
Many of them were watching TV.
This guy here, oh, such a rhino, such a POS. He did have a good plane ride or bus ride or whatever. People got to tell him how much they liked him.
People, I'm proud to be a member of the United States Senate and meet with people of integrity as we do here today. Now we gather due to a selfish man's injured pride and the outrage of supporters who he has deliberately misinformed for the past 2 months and
Did I misspeak, Miss D?
What happened
Not
here
E.
today was an insurrection incited by the President of the United States. Those who choose to continue to support his dangerous gambit by objecting to the results of a legitimate democratic election will forever be seen as being complicit in an unprecedented attack.
Illinois standing instead.
Fairly or not,
First show of
they'll be remembered for
2021.
their role in the shameful episode in American history. That will be their legacy. I salute Senator Langford, and Loeffler, and Braun, and Daines, and I'm sure others, who in the light of today's outrage have withdrawn their objection. For any who remain insistent on an audit in order to satisfy the many people who believe that the election was stolen, I'd offer this perspective. No congressional audit is ever going to convince these voters, particularly when the president will continue to say that the election was stolen. The best way we can show respect for the voters who are upset is
We're
by
not all
telling
doomed,
them
really
the
cruel.
truth.
Let me tell you how this all ends ultimately. And you're not doomed if you have Christ in your heart. If you believe that He is the way, the truth, and the light, you are not doomed. You will have everlasting life. And the ending to all this, and I hate to spoil it for you, but I've read the book, and I suggest you read it also.
That's the
The Holy
burden.
Bible. I suggest
That's
the
the
King
duty
James
of
Version.
leadership.
But
The
good wins
truth
in the
is
end.
that
God wins.
President-elect Biden won the election.
So,
President Trump lost. I've had that experience myself. It's
yeah,
no fun.
this guy, man.
Scores of courts, the president's own
Lord,
attorney
please give me
general, state
patience.
election
Please give
officials,
me
both Republican and
more
Democrat, have reached
understanding,
that
Lord.
unequivocal decision. And in light of today's sad circumstances, I asked my colleague, do we weigh our own political fortunes more heavily than we weigh the strength of our republic,
Term
the strength
limits
of our
are needed.
democracy, and the cause
You know,
of freedom?
they should be
What's the
in
weight of
government for more than
personal
10 years.
acclaim
Term limits are
compared to the
needed
weight of
on,
conscience?
apparently on the Supreme
Leader
Court.
McConnell said that the vote today
They
was the
shouldn't be in
most
there for more
important
than
in his
10 years.
36 years of public service. Think of that. Authorizing 2 wars.
And what really needs to
vote
happen
against
is
2
we need to have
impeachments.
honest
He
elections.
said that not because the vote
We need to
reveals
follow the
something about the
Constitution.
election,
The framers of the
it's because this
Constitution
vote reveals something about us.
knew what they were doing, and we need to follow that.
I urge my colleagues to move forward with completing the electoral count, to refrain from further objections, and to unanimously affirm the legitimacy of the presidential election. Thank you, Mr. President.
Who are y'all talking about? Hillary? There's supposedly a video of Hillary putting the skin off the face of a young girl on her on her own face. Her and that human Aberdeen or whatever, whose husband Anthony Weiner had all that filth on his laptop, that implicated a bunch of these people. The New York City Police, which they see a lot of disturbing stuff, cried over this video. Now, why ain't that public knowledge? President Trump.
Coming close to breaking this promise. Since 1797, each U.S. president has peacefully handed over power to the next. And that will happen again on January 20th, when Donald Trump, despite the protesters today, the violence today, when Donald Trump leaves the White House at noon and Joe Biden becomes president. And we've heard tonight from both Democrats and
I don't see it,
about the importance of
as far as this world,
in the
this
election,
this country of ours. I don't see this ending well.
evidence of widespread voter fraud.
I don't see a lot of
This is
peace
not just
coming
an
up.
issue for us here in
And
the United States.
Donald Trump is the
This is
first
an
president
issue for
in
nascent
how many
democracies around the
presidencies to
world.
not start a
Who,
war,
as Senator
not go to
Romney
war with
said,
someone.
look to the United States as an example.
Middle East
We
relations,
are
they were
shining
good.
city on the
The
hill.
economy was good.
We give those struggling under oppression hope for a better future. Now, like
The
so
man
many
did what
of
he
us in
said he
this
was going to
chamber,
do.
I've traveled to developing democracies around the world, to Afghanistan and Iraq, to the Western Balkans, to Africa, to the country of Georgia. I went there with my colleague, Senator Risch.
They flung it in our
2012,
face,
we went to
Hobbit.
Georgia to observe
Then
officially
it
on behalf of
disappears.
the Senate, the
Then they
election
silence us. It
between
disappears off this
outgoing
mainstream
President Mikhail Saakashvili
websites
and his
and apps
United National
that they
Movement
pretty
Party,
much force you to go.
and the challenge
If I
by
could be on live
Dream,
on
which was a
a
newly
different
formed
platform
party
right now,
supported,
I would do it.
funded by billionaire
I guess I need to
oligarch
look into
Bidzina
Twitch. There's a few of them that do it.
It was a battle for parliament, but also for control of the government.
It's hard for me to believe
Senator
that
Risch and
any
I
of these
visited
people that's
multiple
coming up
polling
here and
places on
saying stuff
election
like these
day,
are good
and
Christian
we
people.
agreed with the international assessment that election
But some of them may be,
was
some
free
of
and
them
fair,
might
and
have
that
Christ
Georgia
in their
and
heart.
Maine
They're just
were the
blinded
winners.
by all this
But there
other
was real
nonsense.
concern in the country that Saakashvili was going to refuse to give up power, that would lead to violence. It would end the nascent democratic reforms that were happening in that former Soviet republic. And
Exactly, Pappy.
So
Pappy says
Senator
Trump is not
Richard,
liked by either party when
day
it
after
comes
the
right down
election,
to it. He
went
is
to
not
visit
part of the network.
President
And
Saakashvili
that's the thing that gives
to
me
try and
hope.
talk him out of
That,
staying in
you know,
power.
both
And
parties are against
I
him. We're
remember
seeing
very
that
clearly
tonight.
going to his home, and we sat down with him and we
I
pointed
think,
out that
I
the
honestly think
hallmark
that the man
of
really loves our
democracy, what
country.
he
He
had
really
worked so
loves
hard for in his 8 years as
the people
president
that love
was
the
that
country, the patriots.
the
I
hallmark
really
of
think
that
that.
was to turn over power
I'm
in a
99%
peaceful
there, but there's
election
always that
to the
1%
person that the
chance
voters
that this could
chose.
be part of the
So,
elite's plan.
President Saakashvili listened to us, and he
They've
did
been begging
move
for
us
a war
peacefully.
for years now.
But it's important
And it's hard to say where the
that
chips are going to fall.
future generations
Cause, and you know, some
recognize
of you might not like
that
this, but I no
America,
longer trust the police.
like democracies everywhere,
The
depends
I've got
on a
family
peaceful
members, I've
transition
got
of power,
friends
on believing
that were in the army or in the
what the voters
police.
say and ensuring
But
that happens.
you know, those folks are taking orders.
We've heard from some senators
They work for
today
us, but they're
who have
taking
been
orders from
enabling
other people.
President Trump's willful disregard of the votes
So it's
of our
hard to say where these
citizenry,
chips are going to fall.
even as they speak out against
And if
foreign
they bring the
leaders who
UN
ignore
in here,
their own people.
if it does, something
They
does
will
flare up,
fail, and history will remember them.
God save
And I
us
hope
all.
that future generations will view the
Because we're not
actions
giving up our weapons.
of some of those folks today as little more than
Not
an
willingly.
unfortunate anomaly.
I'm not.
Future opportunists may use this ill-fated effort to seek short-term political gain over the long-term stability of our republic. But for the sake of our great country and America's standing in the world, I ask my colleagues today to fully endorse the results of the free and fair election and set
I think
aside
it's
this
free will,
partisan
mankind's
attempt
free
to
will.
subvert the will
And
of the
it's
people.
good versus evil.
We should be
D.
venerating the peaceful transition of power.
I don't know. I
even
don't think.
with
I don't
our
think.
own preferred
You know,
candidate being omitted.
ultimately,
That is,
the
after
Lord's
all,
in control.
who we are
But
in
I
the
don't think
United
this is
States
what
of
He wants.
America. Thank you.
You know how America's become.
Majority Leader.
Men can go in the women's
President,
restroom.
yield
Over in
5 minutes
California,
to Senator
you can
from
be a
Ohio, Senator
pedophile
Butler.
legally.
Senator from Ohio.
That's not His plan. We as a country
Mr. Vice President,
have turned our
you
back
have
on Him.
fulfilled your duties
Not
as
we
President of the
as
Senate
people,
tonight.
but we as a country. Look at what our country is now. It is unrecognizable from whenever I was a kid. And what's going to happen in the next 5 years, next 10 years? What's it going to be like? Because it's not getting better.
I thought about changing my mind and not speaking tonight, given the
Unless the
lack of
Lord comes
support.
back, it's not getting
And I
better.
know all of my colleagues would have appreciated that greatly. But I felt it was necessary to speak because I want the American people, particularly my constituents in Ohio, to see that we will not be intimidated, that we will not be disrupted from our work, that here in the citadel of democracy,
Exactly,
we
Ramona.
will continue to do the work of the people.
I mean, it's all,
Mob rule is not going to prevail here.
like Ramona said,
Now,
good
let's
becomes
face it,
evil and evil becomes good. And
get
it's all in
rid
the
of people
Bible.
this
It's
chamber
all there. It's all wrote down. It's
brave,
just we're getting some of the
self-involved
details now
officers
of
stood in the
exactly
breach and ensured
what it's talking about.
that the
You know,
citadel
that
of
book was
democracy
written
would be protected
thousands of
and we
years
would be
ago.
defended.
And now
We are deeply grateful for that,
it's
as
all
is
coming to a
the
head.
nation. I've listened carefully to the
And I
comments of my
pray that I
colleagues,
see the Lord come back in my
and I've
lifetime,
listened over the past
not
couple
tonight.
of weeks as this
I
issue
pray
has
that
been
He comes back
discussed. And
tonight.
I
I'm
tell you,
ready.
for me, it's not a hard decision.
Let's get out of here.
I
Let's
stand
do
with
this.
the Constitution. I stand with what the Constitution makes clear. The people and the states hold the power here, not us. My oath to the
Exactly,
Constitution and my
John. I
reverence
mean,
for our democratic principles make it easy for me to confirm these state certifications.
really, Pappy.
By
You
the
know,
way,
I think
I
I
opposed
have
this
heard that.
process some 15 years ago when some Democrats chose to object to the electors from my home state of Ohio after the 2004 elections. I opposed it then, and I oppose it now. I said at the time,
You
Congress
are
must
opposing.
not thwart the will of the people. That's what we would be doing. Let's assume for a moment that those who object to the certifications are right.
Who's
The
crying, Bill?
Constitution intended that a bare majority of members of Congress could circumvent
No
the
one's
states that have
crying
chosen to
in here.
certify
Nobody needs to grow
the
up.
popular votes
We are grown up. We just want to
of
be
their
treated
own
like
state
that
citizens. I ask
by
the
our
objectors to think
employees.
about the precedent that would be set if we were to do that. What if the majority in the House and the Senate was of the other party when a presidential candidate of our party came through a close presidential election? Would you want a Congress controlled by the Democrats to play the role you now intend for us? It is asking Congress to substitute its judgment for the judgment of the voters, and its judgment for the judgment of the states that certified the results. And even forgetting the dangerous precedent that would be set, what would be the basis for objecting in this election? Look, I voted for President Trump. I supported him because I believe the Trump administration's policies are better
But
for
now I'm a
Ohio,
turncoat.
for the country. And I supported the Trump campaign's right to pursue recounts. They had every right to do it. And legal challenges. I agree that there were instances of fraud and irregularities in the 2020 elections. I think we all do.
Okay.
By the way, there is fraud and irregularities in every presidential election.
On this scale. Is that what you're
But it
saying?
is also true that after 2 months of recounts and legal challenges, not a single state recount changed the result. And of the dozens of lawsuits filed, not one found evidence of fraud or irregularities widespread enough to change the result of the election.
I
This
wouldn't
was the
elect a
finding
dog
of
catcher.
numerous Republican-appointed judges and the
It'll
Trump
be an
administration's own
interesting week.
Department of Justice. Every state has now weighed in and chosen to certify its electoral slate based on the popular vote as set out in the Constitution. I understand that many Americans who would never storm this Capitol don't trust the integrity of the 2020 election. Don't think the state should have certified. Don't think we should have accepted the results.
But we're
from the
going to do
states
it
and
anyway.
insisting on more transparency and accountability. In the 2016 elections, lest we forget, many Democrats objected to the results and distrusted the election. I challenge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle
Look at this brainwashing they put under all the
also to
videos.
do our part to try to restore
It's the night of
faith
the
in
election.
our elections.
Let's put this in everybody's head.
Mr. President, we should all work to improve the integrity of the electoral system and the confidence of the American people in this bedrock of our great democratic republic. Today, I'll do my constitutional duty and oppose these efforts to reject the state-certified results.
And Pappy, I
tomorrow,
pray
in
the
wake of
bells
this attack
lift,
on the Capitol,
and that all
pandemic
good
that
Christian
engulfs us and
people
other
will be
national
able to see.
challenges, let's work together.
Guys, it frustrates me to no end. Trying to talk to my dad, trying to show Biden in his own words, talking about how they've created the biggest election fraud in history, how he threatened Ukraine to not give them their money, which why we giving them money to begin with, I don't know. But to not give them their money if they don't fire the prosecuting attorney that's looking into his son's case.
But a 10-minute speech took immense preparation.
Won't even look at it. And that's so frustrating that people don't even want to know the truth. They've heard what they've heard on the TV, on the programming. They've heard what they've heard, and they don't want to think for themselves. They don't want to look into matters. Just like our Supreme Court don't want to look into these matters. Like all these puppets here don't want us to look into these matters.
Form of government.
If they don't have nothing to fear, then let's put it all out there. Let's all look at it. Let's all try to be honest about it. If there's nothing there, there's nothing there. If Joe Biden won somehow from his basement with his 6 people at each of his rallies and got more votes than anyone in history, God bless him. God bless you, Joe Biden, if you done it. I don't think you done it.
In Russia. Democracy, as we have practiced it, is fragile. It's fragile and it rests upon trust. It rests upon trust in facts. It rests upon trust in courts, in public officials, and yes, in elections.
Well, I mean, that's another thing
I don't
about the
sympathize
virus
or
is
justify
they
or
silence
in
doctors
any way
that's coming out with
or
alternative
in any way
opinions on this
support.
virus. They silence
That's
them.
that's
They
putting it
cut their
mildly,
tongues
what
out.
happened here today, but I understand it. I
They cyber
understand it because I
attack
saw
their
those people
tongues and cut them
interviewed
out.
today, and they said,
It's
we're here
disgusting.
because this election has been stolen. And the reason they said that is that their leader has been telling them that every day for 2 months. We cannot afford to pull bricks out
Prove it
from the
then. Prove it.
foundation
Let's
of
prove it.
trust that underlines
You all won't even look at it.
our
Prove
entire
it.
system.
Prove it
And I
wasn't
agree
stolen.
with
I would
Governor
love to
Romney
know that it wasn't stolen.
that the answer to this problem is to
If they could
tell
show me
people
that
the
that
truth,
election wasn't stolen,
is to tell them
then
what
I would be the
happened.
first to say, okay,
It's
Joe Biden
easy to
is our president.
confront your opponents. It's hard to confront your friends. It's hard to tell your supporters something they don't want to hear. But that's our obligation. That's why the word leader is applied to people in jobs like ours. It's not supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be something that we take on as a sacred obligation. And if people believe something that isn't true, it's our obligation to tell them, no, I'm sorry, it isn't. Just as Senator Portman just said.
But just
as
because you
Mike
tell
Lucas
us
said,
doesn't mean we should
can't
believe
do
you.
this here.
Why
We
don't you
don't wanna
show
do
us?
this here.
Show
This
us.
is a power reserved to the
I want to
states,
see with my own eyes
not
and
to the
think with my
Congress.
own brain what's
And I
true and what's
agree with
false.
the majority
Show
leader.
us.
I think this is
That's
one
all
of the
we
most
ask.
important votes any of us will ever take. On December 1st, 1862, Abraham Lincoln came to this building. He came to this building in the darkest days of the Civil War. He was trying to awaken the Congress to the crisis that we were facing. And he didn't feel that they were fully and effectively engaged. And he ended his speech that day with words that I think have an eerie relevance tonight. Here's what Abraham Lincoln said.
The Republican,
Fellow Americans,
the
we
one that was
cannot
against the
escape
Democrats and their
history.
slavery, is that the Abraham Lincoln you're speaking
We
of?
of this Congress and this administration will be remembered in spite of ourselves. No personal significance or insignificance can spare one or another of us. And here's his final words. The fiery trial through which we pass will light us down in honor or dishonor to the latest generation.
Well, lady,
The
look it up
fiery
on Google.
trial
Why
through
don't
which
try
we
a different
pass
search engine?
will light
Have
us
better
down
results.
in honor or dishonor to the latest generation. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator from Maryland.
Thank you, Mr. President. The mob violence and attack we saw on our Capitol today should be a wake-up call.
God help me,
to
Lord, please
each
help me.
and every one of us of what happens
I wish they would
when
get
we
on
fail
with
to
this.
come
Quit
together,
lying to us and
not
get on
as
with it. Do
Democrats
what you're
or
going to do.
Republicans, but each of us as Americans,
I don't know if I can handle it anymore.
to stand up to a president who time and again has shown contempt for our democracy, contempt for our Constitution. Today here on the Capitol, we witnessed people taking down an American flag and putting up a Trump flag. That is not democracy in the United States of America. As every senator who has spoken has mentioned, we have
Can you show us a link to that, sir?
had a peaceful
And maybe some
transfer of
context
power.
to it?
Nobody likes to lose, and supporters of the losing candidate are always disappointed. What's different this time? We all know what's different this time. We had a president who, as the senator from New Jersey said, even before a vote was cast that if he didn't win the election, it was going to be a fraud. And every day since then has perpetrated that lie. We have a
Trump's
president
supposed to
who
speak.
just today
I'm interested in that myself.
criticized very loyal vice president who is presiding right now, urging him to disregard his responsibilities under the Constitution of the United States in order to reinstall Donald Trump as president. The same person who got on the phone to the Secretary of State in Georgia and threatened him to change the results of the election. Mr.
Now they're
President,
lying about that
I
phone
read
call.
something this week I'd never thought I'd read in a newspaper in the United States of America.
Was it the
It was
truth?
an op-ed by all the living former
Did you read the
secretaries
truth
of
in a
defense,
newspaper in America?
including
Here.
Secretaries Rumsfeld, Cheney, and Mattis,
Oh, that filth. Okay.
warning
So you're just going to
warning
lie
the
to us
country
again.
about our tradition of peaceful transfer of power and that it would be inappropriate for the military to take sides. In the United States of America, we talk to the world about how we want to promote democracy and our values, and right here at home, too many are undermining those values. And Mr. President, Donald Trump could not do this alone. He can only do it if he's aided and abetted by individuals who are willing to perpetrate those lies and those conspiracies. And that is why it is so important that we as Democrats and Republicans and senators stand up together. Stand up together.
I'm not on Twitter.
And tell the truth. You know, when you go into a court of law like those 60 cases, you're testifying under penalty of perjury. That's very different than here in the House and the Senate. And in all those
Exactly,
60 cases
Pappy.
under
There's
penalty of
there's
perjury,
all the
there
it's
was
all the
no
narrative.
evidence of widespread fraud.
They talk. Listen.
So it
Don't
should
listen
be
to
easy for us
what anyone
all
says. Go by
together
their
to
actions,
tell the truth.
not
On
what they're
January
saying.
20th,
Go
Joe
by their
Biden will be
actions.
sworn
Look
in as the
into
next president
look
of the
into
United
what
States.
they're saying.
He has
And I'll
said
tell
he
you
wants
what,
to
a liar.
bring the country
Will tell you
together.
lies.
He
And
has
don't
said
trust
he
a
wants to
liar.
bring Democrats and Republicans together
Think
to
for
do some
yourself.
of the pressing business
Look
in
up
this
the
country, to
information
defeat
yourself.
this pandemic, to get the economy going again, to face challenging issues of racial and social justice. I hope we will learn from what happened today, the mob attack on this Capitol.
Mob attack.
The price we pay when we don't stand up for the truth and for democracy. James McHenry,
Y'all sure ducked down
Maryland's
and hid
delegate to the
whenever that mob
Constitutional
was in there
Convention, wrote about a famous exchange
trying to
in his
get you to
diaries
work.
between Elizabeth Willing Powell and Benjamin Franklin. Wrote, a lady asked Dr. Franklin, well, doctor, what have we got? A republic or a monarchy? A republic, replied Dr. Franklin, if you can keep it. My colleagues, this is a test of whether we're united to keep our republic. I hope we will pass the test together. Thank you.
Majority Leader. Mr. President, I yield up to 5 minutes to the Senator from South Carolina, Senator Graham.
Senator from South Carolina.
Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham's going to speak to us. Yes.
Many times my state has been the problem. I love it. It's where I want to die, but no time soon. Tim and I have a good relationship. I love Tim Scott. 1876, South Carolina, Louisiana, and Florida sent 2 slate of electors. They had 2 governments, by the way, and we didn't know what to do. Why did South Carolina, Florida, and Louisiana do it? To hold the country hostage to end Reconstruction. It worked. The commission was 8-7. It didn't work. Nobody accepted it. The way it ended is when Hayes did a deal with these 3 states. You give me the electors, I'll kick the Union Army out. The rest is history. It led to Jim Crow. If you're looking for historical guidance, this is not the one to pick. If you're looking for a way to convince people there was no fraud, having a commission chosen by Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell, and John Roberts is not going to get you to where you want to go. It ain't going to work. So it's not going to do any good. It's going to delay, and it gives credibility to a dark chapter of our history. That's why I'm not with you. But I will fight to my death for you. You're able to object. You're not doing anything wrong. Other people have objected. I just think it's a uniquely bad idea to delay this election. Trump and I, we've had a hell of a journey. I hate it to end this way. Oh my God, I hate it. From my point of view, he's been a consequential president. But today, first thing you
All right.
all I can say is count me out. Enough is enough. I've tried to be helpful. But when the Wisconsin Supreme Court ruled 4-3 that they didn't violate the Constitution of Wisconsin,
They're all
I agree with the
sellouts.
3, but I accept the 4. If Al Gore can accept 5-4, he's not president. I can accept Wisconsin.
They are
4-3.
all sellouts. Yeah.
Pennsylvania,
28th
it
Amendment.
went to the Second Circuit. So much for all the judges being in Trump's pocket.
But big money is what runs the
They
country.
said, no, you're wrong.
They're all
accept the
stuffing their
Pennsylvania
pockets
Second
full of
Circuit
it.
that Trump's lawsuit wasn't.
He's got a
wasn't
hold of it right now.
Georgia, they said the Secretary of State took the law in his own hands.
Hold
and
on to
changed
them bills that
election
ain't
laws
backed by
unlawfully.
nothing. We can
The federal
print
judge
more.
said, no, I accept the federal judge, even though I don't agree with it. Fraud. They said there's 66,000 people in Georgia under 18 voted. How many people believe that? I asked, give me 10. I hadn't had one. They said 8,000 felons in prison in Arizona voted. Give me 10. I hadn't gotten one. Does that say there's problems in every election? I don't buy this. Enough's enough. We got to end it. Vice President Pence, what
There's
they're
two
asking you
videos
to
you might
do,
want to
you
watch
won't
there,
do because you
Lindsay.
can't. You talk about interesting times. I associate myself with Rand Paul. How many times will you hear that? The mob has done something nobody else could do to get me and Rand to agree. Rand is right. If you're a conservative, this is the most offensive concept in the world, that a single person could disenfranchise 155 million people. The President of the Senate shall, in the presence of the Senate and the House of Representatives, open all certificates, and the votes shall then be counted. The person having the greatest number of votes for president shall be president. Where in there does it say Mike can say, I don't like the results? I want to send them back to the states. I believe there was fraud. To the conservatives who believe in the Constitution, now's your chance to stand up and be counted. Originalism, count me in.
And that's fine, but they have to be legal
Means what it
votes,
says.
Lindsay.
So, Mike, Mr. Vice President, just hang in there. They said we can count on Mike. All of us can count on the Vice President. You're going to do the right thing. You're going to do the Constitution.
And it's time to kick that money changing table over, Pappy.
You got a son-in-law who flies F-18s. They're out there flying so that we can get it right here. There are people dying, to my good friend from Illinois, to make sure we have a chance to argue among ourselves. And when it's over, it is over. It is over.
Where was that chance
Joe
at?
Biden, I've traveled
Where was
the
the
world with
chance
you.
at, Lindsay?
I hoped he lost. I prayed he would lose. He won.
No, you didn't.
He's the legitimate president of the
Filthy
United
liar.
States. I cannot convince people, certain groups, by my words, but I will tell you by my actions that maybe I, above all others in this body, need to say this. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are lawfully elected and will become the president and the vice president of the United States on January the 20th.
Majority Leader. Mr. President, I yield back the balance of our time.
All time has expired. The question is, shall the objections submitted by the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Gosar, and the senator from Texas, Mr. Cruz, and others be sustained? Is there a second? There is. Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Baldwin. Mr. Barrasso. Mr. Bennett. Mrs. Blackburn. Mr. Blumenthal. Mr. Blunt. Mr. Booker. Mr. Bozeman. Mr. Braun. Mr. Brown. Mr. Burr. Ms. Cantwell. Mrs. Capito. Mr. Cardin. Mr. Carper. Mr. Casey. Mr. Cassidy. Ms. Collins. Mr. Coons. Mr. Cornyn. Ms. Cortez Masto. Mr. Cotton. Mr. Kramer. Mr. Crapo. Mr. Cruz. Mr. Daines. Ms. Duckworth. Mr. Durbin. Ms. Ernst. Mrs. Feinstein. Mrs. Fisher. Mrs. Gillibrand. Mr. Graham. Mr. Grassley. Mr. Haggerty. Ms. Harris. Ms. Hassan. Mr. Holy. Mr. Heinrich. Mr. Hickenlooper. Ms. Hirono. No. Mr. Hoven. Mrs. Hyde-Smith. Mr. Inhofe. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Kane. Mr. Kelly. Mr. Kennedy. Mr. King. Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Langford. Mr. Leahy. Mr. Lee. Mrs. Loeffler. Mr. Lujan. Ms. Lummis. Mr. Manchin. Mr. Markey. Mr. Marshall. Mr. McConnell. Mr. Menendez. Mr. Merkley. Mr. Moran. Ms. Murkowski. Mr. Murphy. Mrs. Murray. Mr. Paul. Mr. Peters. Mr. Portman. Mr. Reed. Mr. Risch. Mr. Romney. Ms. Rosen. Mr. Rounds, Mr. Rubio, Mr. Sanders, Mr. Sass, Mr. Schatz, Mr. Schumer, Mr. Scott of Florida, Mr. Scott of South Carolina, Mrs. Shaheen, Mr. Shelby, Ms. Sinema, Ms. Smith, Ms. Stabenow, Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Tester, Mr. Thune, Mr. Tillis, Mr. Toomey, Mr. Tuberville, Mr. Van Hollen, Mr. Warner, Ms. Warren, Mr. Whitehouse, Mr. Wicker, Mr. Wyden, Mr. Young,
It'll probably take them a couple of days to count all them votes. Their math isn't very good. I don't know. It'll probably take them a couple of days to count up all them yes and no's. Math is not their best subject, obviously. Deception is their best one. That's about all I can take for tonight to begin with. I pray that God lifts the veil so that more of his people can see exactly what's going on. I pray everybody is ready for what's about to happen. And again, most importantly, is you need to have Christ in your heart. You need to have Christ as your Lord and your Savior. One thing's for certain, ain't none of us getting out of this alive, this old world. But you can have everlasting life through our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. So if you don't prep on anything else, prep that soul, get that soul right. Pray on it. What's going to happen in the next few days is, I don't see this ending very nicely for our nation. It's going to be tough. I've been in conversations with one of my lifelong friends, and he believes in the pre-trib rapture, and I used to, but now I'm not so sure. I think we're going to go through hell on earth. It's not going to be fun. But there is an end to all this. And if you have took the Lord Jesus Christ into your heart, and you believe in Him, and you trust Him, and you've given your soul to Him, no worries. We're good. Thanks everyone for joining tonight. I'm going to get me a shower, get back online and look and see how many lies I've been told today through this puppet show we're seeing here. And that's all these people are. Maybe we might start digging deeper into the elite and who actually is in control. Ultimately, God's in control, but Satan has dominion on this earth. Now we each have our free will, and you can choose good, you can choose evil. But in the end, good wins. So you got to decide what side you want to be on.
On this vote, the yeas are 6, the nays are 93. The objection is not sustained. The Secretary will notify the House of the action of the Senate, informing that body that the Senate is now ready to proceed to joint session with further counting of the electoral vote for President and Vice President. Majority Leader.
Mr. President. So, colleagues, here's where we are. We have a few more speakers now as we wait for the House to finish their debate.
That's y'all's lies anyway.
We expect the House to finish.
Guys, I don't know. I might jump on
Arizona
later. Like I said, I'm going to do a bit of the old research
and midnight.
and find out how many lies these people that work for me are telling me. All these people in here need to be fired. There's no sense in having someone in control and this much power for more than 10 years.
Finally, following their remarks,
They don't work for us anymore. They're supposed to work for us. How it's supposed to go is they're supposed to work for us, but they don't work for us anymore. And you noticed in this last bill where they were trying to get Americans their money for the pandemic virus they have out there, that like Miss D was talking about earlier, you know, I think there is something that will cure it. I definitely don't think it's as bad as they lay it on, but to them, the ends justify the means. This is the ends right here. Getting their puppet back in the White House. But yeah, I'm gonna do a bit more research on this.
Not many will.
Ultimately,
This isn't yours, right?
we as Christians win.
So we're in research.
Get your soul right, get your heart right with the Lord. You know, get prayed up. If you haven't found Christ, find Him. It's the best move you can make. It's the best thing you will ever do on this earth. Pray on all this. Pray that God reveals to you the truth. Pray for your friends, your family, for our country. I'd like to see all of you in heaven. I'd like to see every man on this earth in heaven, every woman on this earth in heaven. Everybody have a good night, and God bless.